Sorry, I was just finishing my Eddie the Yeti free word search from my local Mazio's. And from one mythic creature to another, you've probably noticed behind me. You can't help but notice behind me, folks, that I have a life-size cutout of the one and only Volt. Volt was a fox and a mascot of the WNBA franchise, the Tulsa Shock, from 2010 to 2015. How I came across a life-size cutout in Volt and this amazing team-issued authentic jersey from their inaugural season in 2010, plus about 35 other items, well, that was a match made in heaven. Nowhere else other than Facebook Marketplace. So, while I move Volt before he falls over and knocks over all of the strategically placed items on my bookshelf, and really, it's so my kids can't get to some of those collectibles, if we're being honest, you take a look at this video of all the great gear that I got from that Facebook Marketplace purchase. Roll the video. Welcome back. I put Volt up in a safe place so he won't scare my children or fall in the middle of the night to spook me. Now, I have a problem. I think I'm in a safe space. I'm in a trust tree here with the rent-free community. We got to be in the trust tree to talk about things that live rent-free in our minds. I have a problem buying historical sports memorabilia, as well as anything from like the 90s. I have a whole set of unopened trading cards from the original Batman movies with Michael Keaton. I am Batman. And I also, with this purchase of the WNBA Tulsa Shock gear on Facebook Marketplace, I now have a caricature of Volt, the mascot. Why? I don't know. My wife asks me these things every day. She comes out to the studio. Why did I purchase these things? Well, I tell her this reason. There was a massive flag, the flag the Volt carried at the BOK Center in downtown Tulsa, and I wanted it, but it was massive. It would have took up half of our first floor of our house, and I passed on it. And I'm sure glad I did, as a married man and father of two, because I had another opportunity to purchase all of these amazing items for a team that lives rent-free in my head, the Tulsa Shock. Now, if you know my family and you know me, I have an obsession with learning about sports franchises and sports leagues and how they've relocated, rebranded, or folded altogether, like the World Football League. I could spend a whole show, or all the spring football leagues, the predecessors to the NBA, right? I love reading all that stuff, statistical stuff. I used to go to sleep with ESPN on my TV, and I had one of those TVs you had controls on the TV. Now, I didn't have a controller either, so you had to go up and push the controls at night to change the channel or turn the volume down. Well, those buttons wore out, so you'd have to take a risk and put your finger right through there in my little room there in the west side of my hometown community, and I would shock myself. Maybe it was a bigger picture connection to the Tulsa Shock. The pun just writes itself. I'm proudly a dad, so enjoy the dad jokes. Well, I purchased this because the WNBA and the WNBA Players Association just reached a historic collective bargaining agreement deal that will help see much-needed growth within the players' share of revenue for the league, which in turn results in a substantial increase in player salaries from the minimum to the player max contracts. Now, it's nowhere close to the NBA, but it is a substantial growth for those outstanding women who play throughout the franchises in the WNBA. So I thought Tulsa had a team, and not just any team. They were home to the once Detroit Shock, the original expansion franchise, the first expansion franchise in the WNBA. The WNBA was founded in 1997 with 8 franchises. And in 1998, the Detroit Shock, with big brother, the Detroit Pistons, became the first expansion franchise to the brand new league in just its second year of existence. Now, during that time, all the WNBA franchises were centrally owned by the NBA itself. Now, in 2002, the NBA would divest and give the opportunity to NBA franchises to buy out the rights to their WNBA teams, their counterpart, or to have independent ownership step up and buy the franchises. Now, we'd see teams fold throughout that time, but the Detroit Shock were strong. They had the Detroit bad boy era. Bill Laimbeer as head coach and general manager, with his former Bad Boys teammate Rick Mahorn as assistant coach, and Rick would go on to be the last head coach of the Detroit Shock before they relocated to Tulsa in 2010. Now, the Detroit Pistons were a thorn in the side of young Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls, preventing him from winning what we can only amount to be probably 10-plus championships with the Bulls. But every hero needs a villain in the Detroit Bad Boy Pistons. And Bill Laimbeer and company were the villain that would fuel 2 three-peats for Michael Jordan. Now, Bill Laimbeer would lead the WNBA's Detroit Shock to unprecedented success, 3 championships. There's only a couple franchises that have more than that. There's only 3 franchises with 4, and they moved in 2009 amidst the Great Recession of 2008. And Detroit, as a city and its economy, was hit hard. Unemployment rose to 16% and higher. Their city filed bankruptcy due to over $1 billion in debt. Chrysler and General Motors received bailouts from the federal government in the Bush administration as well in the Obama administration, and filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2009, and they would be reshaped forever. We'd have to say goodbye to Pontiac and Hummer. And along with saying goodbye to those beloved brands, the city of Detroit also lost their owner of their Pistons and their Shock, who passed away, and his estate put the Shock up for sale. Now, Tulsa was waiting to get their own WNBA franchise. They had competing groups who were trying to lure the interest of the WNBA to get an expansion franchise to our great city in Tulsa. And they had the opportunity to come together to purchase the Detroit Shock and relocate them to Tulsa. Now, before they even had the promise of an expansion franchise or purchasing the Shock, they hired themselves a head coach. Yes, the Tulsa Investment Group, later to be known as Tulsa Pro Hoops LLC, would hire a head coach before even having a team to roll out there at the BOK Center. And they hired none other than the Generalissimo, the general of what would become known as 40 Minutes of Hell. And I quote, Mom. And this would become a 30 for 30 later on ESPN. I'm talking about the 1994 NCAA Coach of the Year, Nolan Richardson. Now, Nolan Richardson would gain his fame through his 18 years of being the head coach for the Razorbacks over at the University of Arkansas and leading that Woo Pig Suey nation to a national title in 1994, as well as 3 Final Fours during his 18-year tenure. He amassed 389 victories during his time with the Razorbacks, the most ever by a head coach at the helm of their basketball program. The court was named Nolan Richardson Court in 2019, and he is cemented in the Hall of Fame in 2014. Now, Nolan Richardson's connection to Tulsa, other than Fayetteville being about 90 minutes away from the city, was that he won a 1980 national championship with Western Texas Junior College. In the ensuing year, he jumps from junior college as a national champ to the Tulsa Golden Hurricane at the Division I level in 1981, and he would win the National Invitational Tournament, the NIT, with the Tulsa Golden Hurricane in his first season. He would lead them to the NCAA tournament, 119 victories during his 5-year tenure, as well as another appearance in the NIT. Unprecedented success. Now, the Golden Hurricane would reach the Elite Eight in the late 90s, but Nolan Richardson kicked off a fever pitch for basketball in the Tulsa community. So we had a connection. Now, fast forward, we're gearing up for the inaugural season here in Tulsa. And the WNBA is getting ready to tip off. Nolan Richardson at the helm. And we're getting ready to play a full slate of home games. And I have the official tickets. Yes, another random item. And I believe it was there in the top corner against the Minnesota Lynx. On Saturday, May 15th, 2010, we tipped off at 7 p.m. for our inaugural season of the Tulsa Shock. Now, unfortunately for the Shock, they would go 9-59 in the first 2 seasons of existence here in Tulsa. And for Coach Nolan Richardson and his 40 minutes of hell, he would see a record of 7-38, 7 victories and 38 losses, and would resign at the start of his second season with the Shock, just a few games in. We hired a coach before we even had an expansion franchise or knew that we were buying the Shock. And we don't just hire any coach. We hire an NCAA champion, a junior college national champion, an NIT champ, the Nolan Richardson, who also is fluent in Spanish and coached the Panamanian and Mexican national teams at the international level. And if that's not enough, we went out and got Marion Jones. You remember her? 3-time gold medalist, sprinter, as well as 2 bronze medals at the 2000 Sydney Olympics, Summer Olympics. Now they were later stripped because of her being convicted of doping in the BOK investigation, right? Same investigation that linked Barry Bonds. Now, she was a basketball player at the University of North Carolina with the Tar Heels and won the 1994 national championship as a freshman. She averaged double digits throughout her career. She had played ball at a high level, and in 94, that was before the WNBA. So players, unless they went overseas or played in the predecessors to the WNBA, that was a high level to be so successful at. Now, once deemed as the fastest woman in the world, making exuberant amounts of money for every race she appeared in, she had spent 6 months in prison due to lying to federal investigators about a check cashing scheme, as well as during the BOK doping investigation, which she spent her time in prison down in Texas in 2008. There were rumors in 2009 that Marion Jones was going to try out for the WNBA, was having some workout sessions with the San Antonio Silver Stars. And then 2010, she gets her break with who else than the Tulsa Shock in this inaugural season. She would appear in 47 games for the Shock over 2 years, averaging 2.6 points for the Shock. And that's not it. We also had some other legendary players don the black and gold of the Shock. I'm talking about Cheryl Swoops, the Cheryl Swoops, at age 40, signed with the Shock in 2011. Now, Cheryl Swoops had been deemed the MJ of women's basketball earlier in her prime. She's a gold medalist, a 4-time WNBA champion with the Houston Comets, a 3-time WNBA League MVP, and the 1993 NCAA champ with the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who retired her number. So we have the 93 national champ, the 94 national champ, Cheryl Swoops, even at 40. I grew up watching the Houston Comets, her and Cynthia Cooper. They were balling out down in H-Town. Those were some of the best days of the WNBA. On top of that, we would add a Sooner legend, which I told you there's more gear. We added the Courtney Paris, right? Look at this amazing fat head of Courtney. That they called it a wobble head. I don't even know if these links still work. But the Courtney Paris, who's a twin and daughter of a 3-time Super Bowl champ with the San Francisco 49ers. Her dad, Bubba. Now, Courtney is the all-time leading scorer and rebounder for the OU women's basketball program. She appeared in the Final Four with the Sooners in 2009. She was the 3rd pick in the 2009 WNBA draft to the Sacramento Monarchs, who would fold after her rookie season. She would spend time with the Atlanta Dream down in the South and then have a mid-season trade in 2012 to the Tulsa Shock. Now, she would be with the Shock through their move to Dallas in 2016. In 2014 and 2015, while donning the black and gold of the Shock, she would become the WNBA's leading rebounder in both seasons. Now, she would go on to win the 2018 WNBA championship as a key reserve for the Seattle Storm, and is now an assistant coach for the Chicago Sky in the WNBA after spending time back with the Sooners as an assistant coach. So she's still in the WNBA. Courtney Paris, if you do not remember that era of basketball for the Sooners, she was an absolute boss down low in the post. And then we have a star that was drafted by the Tulsa Shock, who is still balling out at all-star levels in the WNBA today. I'm talking about the Notre Dame All-American, Skylar Diggins. Now, Skylar was picked number 3 overall in the 2013 WNBA draft. She was an All-American at Notre Dame, appeared in 3 Final Fours, losing in the national championship for the Fighting Irish. Now, she recently was a 2025 All-Star selection with the Seattle Storm. That Seattle Storm that Courtney Paris won a WNBA championship with in 2018. She's averaging 15.5 points still today in the later stages of her career. So there's still Shock players out there getting it done that were drafted by Tulsa. The legacy goes on. Now, let's talk about what happened attendance-wise for the Tulsa Shock. So I got some figures for you. Now let's talk about these statistics first. I've already told you that in the first 2 years, things were tough for the Shock. You're averaging, attendance-wise, between 4,800 to 5,500 fans per game. Now you got some highs and you got some lows. That's how averages work, right? We all remember math. Now, you remember that arena, the BOK Center for our non-Tulsa Okies, has a 17,000 plus seating capacity, so they close the upper bowl when they have home games for the Shock. Still, it's a lot of empty seats. And during that time, like I said, the Shock went 59 and 147 and only appeared in the playoffs in their last year in 2015. And by the time they made the playoffs and were swept in 2015 by the Phoenix Mercury, 2-0 in the 2015 Western Conference semifinals, we already knew the fate of the Tulsa Shock and that they were moving to Dallas. The hearts of local fans were already broke. Now, the Shock also own an infamous record. They were, out of their 6 years, bottom of the WNBA for attendance, 4 out of those 6 years. In the 2 years they weren't at the bottom, they were second to last to the Chicago Sky and the San Antonio Silver Stars, now Las Vegas Aces, respectively. They also own the infamous record, which is now tied with the 2022-2023 Indiana Fever, of losing 20 consecutive games, a 20-game losing streak. That 20-game losing streak would be broke by the Cheryl Swoops. She would make the winning shot against San Antonio to end the streak. Now, how does that compare to the now Dallas Wings, who relocated in 2016? Well, in 2025, the Dallas Wings averaged 5,228 fans per game, with a high of 20,000, which they had to play that game in the Dallas Mavericks NBA Arena, the American Airlines Center in downtown Dallas, when they played the Indiana Fever, due to superstar Caitlin Clark. Even though she was injured, they still sold that many tickets and had fans show up. The thing about the Tulsa Shock relocating to Dallas was that they were moving into a much, much smaller arena. They moved into the University of Texas at Arlington's College Park Center, which seats about 7,000 for basketball. Now, if you're averaging anywhere from 4,500 to 5,000 fans with, maybe a high night of 6,000, 6,500, then that's going to seem like a pretty full arena, and the atmosphere is going to be a lot better than trying to fill an NBA-sized arena. Now, the Wings didn't get to Dallas easily. It was a fight. Think about the soap opera, like when you were at home, when you were sick, and all that was on for those folks out there. I'm a late 80s baby, and I know I got some other friends out there who were born in the 1900s. There used to be Price is Right, New News, right? Make a Deal, and As the World Turns, and some other dramas, right? So this was soap opera level. The majority owner
of the Tulsa Shock at the time, Bill Cameron, wanted to move the franchise to Dallas as they were losing money. He had been quoted by the Associated Press of saying that he had covered $6.5 million in losses to keep the franchise afloat. Well, here's where the drama ensues. Minority owner Stuart Price filed a lawsuit trying to keep the team in Tulsa, while the WNBA Board of Governors would go on to approve Mr. Cameron's relocation of the Tulsa Shock to the Dallas Metro. Now, if you're thinking about a population size, you're talking about the DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, versus at the time, Tulsa's population was probably 600K, 700K plus. It just doesn't compare. Tulsa was the second smallest market in the WNBA to the Connecticut Sun, which is hosted on tribal reservation land in a community of about 10,000 people up in Connecticut. The ability to grow and be in a smaller arena had huge upside to going to DFW. As an Okie and a Homer and somebody who loved the Tulsa Shock, I can admit that that was a good move for them. Now, I want a WNBA franchise in the state of Oklahoma. Would love one back in Tulsa, where I'm from. Would love one in Oklahoma City to pair up with the Thunder in the new Continental Coliseum. That's going to be look at the picture here. It's going to be massive. Well, the Dallas Wings are actually moving to downtown Dallas from Arlington. They signed a 15-year agreement, the city of Dallas, to renovate the Dallas Memorial Auditorium into a state-of-the-art arena, as well as they committed to building an $81 million practice facility in the Dallas Metro. That is some massive investment for the WNBA franchise, the Dallas Wings. Now, I will tell you this. If you go to, and look, it's another random memorabilia. If you go to tulsashock.net, it still will take you to the Dallas Wings website. So it's another Tulsa Shock item that lives rent-free just out there, collecting space. I mean, it's just like the Houston Comets I had mentioned earlier, which it looks like the Comets are coming back with the Houston Rockets owners purchasing the Connecticut Sun from the Mohegan tribe and relocating them back to Houston. Because somebody has owned HoustonComets.com, HoustonComets.net, and HoustonComets.org since the founding of the WNBA, since 1997. You can find that for yourself on whois.org. Now, I only presume it was the WNBA protecting their intellectual property. And the Dallas Wings, whatever traffic is still out there, type it in tulsashock.net. If they're fans from the Shock that became Dallas Wings fans, they're still getting them. Just another random thing that lives rent-free out there. Now, I think there's more to the story. And I'm not just going to keep bringing out more. Look, I got a little bobblehead of Volt. I've got the sweet official, look at that. I got the sweet official jerseys from the era of what I like to call the Liga MX era of the WNBA, when we had multiple sponsors. We have Boost Mobile and a local sponsor, the Osage Casino and the wonderful tribe of the Osage Nation on the front of the jersey. And we also had a very, very small badge for the Tulsa Shock. That's how jerseys look like in NASCAR for drivers, right? They got 47 sponsors on the car and on their uniforms, as well as in Liga MX with professional soccer franchises, not just in Mexico, but throughout the world. They've got like 12 different sponsors just to try to pay all the bills. And that was a weird era because the branding and authenticity was gone, right? They were just trying to do their best to offset losses. As Mr. Cameron said, with the $6.5 million that he said he happily paid, but wanted to move to greener grass down in Big D. So, like I said, I think there's more to the story. And I want to tell the story of how Tulsa won and lost a WNBA franchise over a 6-year span. So, I put together a website at tulsashock.com. Yeah, I bought that domain. I've got a real bad problem with buying domains. I had an addiction for a little bit. I got rid of about 100 of them, and now I'm back at it. So, again, I don't know how I'm married at this point with all the stuff I'm collecting. But I want to tell a deeper story. I want to connect with you out there who maybe attended a game, was a fan, a season ticket holder, was able to meet Volt the mascot, Or some of the players like Courtney Paris and Skylar Diggins and Cheryl Swoops. Did you meet these players? Did you go to a basketball camp with them? Did you get a picture with them at the game? And I know I'm talking about iPhone 4 to iPhone 6S era, so the photos aren't going to be great, but it's more about the story. I want to meet with the players, the coaches, the people who worked in operations, the people who worked at the BOK Center, in media and radio and TV, ownership. There's more to the story, and I want to tell it in a long form format because my daughters might not ever see a WNBA team back in the great state of Oklahoma. But I want them to know that anything is possible. And I want your daughters to know that there is a pathway to be a professional at anything they want to be. And you can do that in your home community. Now, me as an Okie, I'm biased, right? But I think it's so important to have a path to pro, whether it's basketball, professional men's basketball, professional women's basketball, soccer, whatever it may be, that you can go from amateur to college to pro, all in your home state. And so I ask you for a favor. Share this video, share the link that I put below in the comments, and try to drive people who have an experience with the Tulsa Shock franchise during those 6 years, or can connect me with a player, a coach, a team employee, an owner, a sponsor, whoever it may be that has a story to tell. And if you're willing to share photos or go on camera, do a remote interview, an in-person interview, I would be extremely appreciative because the Shock lived rent-free in my head, in my heart, and now all of the gear, including that life-size, one-of-a-kind cutout of Mr. Volt the mascot, lives rent-free in my house. We'll catch you on the next episode of Rent Free.